What is up, folks? It is Monday again, so we're going to have another Monday metagame update. We are hitting on Standard, Historic, and Alchemy, talking about how LTR has impacted those sets, and we also have some spicy brews for you from Twitter. So yeah, let's get into it. Alrighty, so starting us off in Standard. So the new set was not Standard legal, so we won't see that in Standard, but surprisingly enough, there is a new deck that people have been trying out. I guess kind of a couple new decks because we saw the new one last week. But Selesnya humans, so some people are taking the mono white humans list and splashing a little bit of green into it to some good effect. We got some Cotilda in here, Augur of Autumn, Hamlet Vanguard. It's a nice human synergy card. Tauren Fist of the Angels, and Knight Errant of Aeos. So interesting that people didn't try this before, or maybe they didn't have good success with it before, but this version here, 63% win rate in best of one. That is nothing to scoff at. And yeah, I mean, makes sense. This gives you humans tapping for extra mana, kind of like Legacy Elves almost. And then both of these have some good human synergy as well. So it makes a lot of sense to try something like this. Interesting new deck that is just kind of popped up out of nowhere. So pretty cool. So it is sitting at tier 1 for the new set. Or not new set, but the last 10 days or so of Standard meta. So that is pretty impressive. Mono white, of course, also very good in best of one still. Naya human still very good in best of one. And mono red as well. Soldiers, etc. So all the aggro decks still really, really good. Surprise, surprise. But Selesnya humans, the new contender to that. And then I wanted to show this meta portion. Usually it's about the same as the tier list, but just wanted to point out that Dimir mid-range is being played in best of one as well and doing pretty decently. I would say holding its own, 55% win rate. Definitely not bad. Something that will climb you up the ladder if you want. But it is one of the most popular decks, and only doing 55% win rate means not working for everybody. So if it's your kind of deck, give it a shot. Otherwise, better to just play aggro, I think, in best of one. Besides that, looks like Esper Legends still very solid. Mono black control, very solid. But on average, over a span of few days, seems like aggro is still the dominating force. All right, so let's look at best of 3. We're skipping over the meta stuff because, like I said, it's almost always the same as the tier list. I checked it out, not a whole lot of interesting stuff. So anyway, here's the tier list. Mono white humans in best of 3, still number 1. Both best of 1, best of 3. Mono white humans is very, very strong. Dimir mid-range, the newcomer to the standard format, doing very, very well and very popular. I mean, look at that, 33,400 matches compared to 700 from mono white. And again, this is the latest week or so of standard, so it changes from time to time. But still, that's a lot of matches played. Esper Control also doing very well in best of 3, but not in best of 1. Unfortunately, in best of 1, it's not doing so hot. But best of 3, it is very nice, with almost a 58% win rate. Orzhov mid-range, that's the mono white mid-range with the Breach the Multiverse at the top end. And yeah, that's about it for your top decks right now in standard. Taking a look at the Esper control list, just because I wanted to see, what kind of ideas they were running. Looks like mostly Void Rend, Farewell, Sunfall. So yeah, I guess what you would expect. A little bit of Siphon Insight, a little bit of counter spells. Nothing too surprising there. And the only Planeswalker being the Wandering Emperor. So that's your win con. Yeah, I mean, looks pretty standard. Probably pretty slow. Probably your other win con is people just running out of patience and, scooping. So Yeah, I'm happy to see Control doing okay in best of 3, but sadly, best of 1 doesn't quite work out very well. Alrighty, in Historic, you will be surprised to learn that it hasn't changed very much at all, if I'm being honest. We saw that Rakdos midrange got stronger. It already was really strong and had Crucius, and Crucius is just totally busted. And now it has the One Ring, so it's even stronger. Shieldred, Crucius, and One Ring are just insane and really annoying to deal with. But however, there are a few other decks in Historic that are also really, really powerful. I would say Crucius Rakdos midrange is kind of your best value deck. Like, it runs away with the game if you don't kill Crucius, if you don't kill the Shieldred, if you don't stop the ring, etc. Like, they just generate so much value. Um, but value often loses to really aggressive decks or decks that can like win in one turn and you can't stop it. So that's where we see these other decks like the Is It Wizards, still very aggressive. Some people are trying out a few new cards in there, but overall mostly the same. I don't even know if the new additions are really worth in the deck, but it's still about the same win rate it was before. The other deck that I feel like is just destroying the ladder is the Hammer Time decks. I guess they're not very popular this week, but usually if we look at the previous meta Hammer was just destroying everything. We do have this Boros one here, but yeah, I'm surprised to not see it at the top of the ladder right now. But the Hammer deck, very, very hard to deal with. Maybe it's because Rakdos is more popular, Rakdos does have a lot of removal, means you can deal with the Hammer a little bit better. But they have the hex-proof creatures, which just make it so hard to deal with. Yeah, anyway, that's surprising it's not there right now for this last week of Historic play. Of course, Affinity, still very popular, still very good. And Goblins also pretty good, Elves pretty good, Belcher pretty good, etc. So you still got a lot of choices in Historic that work out quite well. But probably the best value deck, overall mid-range deck, whatever you want to call it, is Rakdos. I did see that Abzan was doing decent. It's maybe like 8th best deck right now in Historic. This is the cat food oven deck, but no oven, and instead we have Samwise Gamgee for kind of a collected company infinite combo win in a lot of cases. It's pretty scary if they can get the Wolf Strider, Samwise Gamgee cat, then they just win the game. So it is pretty scary. And Wolf Strider comes back from the graveyard, cat comes back from the graveyard. So they don't even have to have them all on the battlefield at the same time. They just have to have played them at some point in the game, and then they can still win. So yeah, it's a thing. It's scary. If it gets you, it will get you. And this person, 64% win rate, so definitely not too shabby. So you can make it work if you like this style of play. It has some legs. All right. Also wanted to look at the Azorius control in Historic because I've heard good things about it. People have been having a lot of success. So I wanted to see kind of what the cards people were putting in there. Seems like mostly the same. 4 One Rings, 2 Teferis, 1 Dream Trawler, various amounts of sweepers, and a lot of counterspells. So yeah, nothing too surprising there. I'm a little bit surprised it 2 Teferi and 1 Dream Trawler because I don't know. That just seems like an odd combination of win cons 2 and 1. Like what? Why 2 and 1? If you really want to synergize with the ring, maybe you should be having 2 Dream Trawlers and 1 Teferi. Would that make more sense? I guess they want 2 Teferis to loop them with each other, but I don't know. It seems like a weird because before people were running 4 Teferis and then like 2 Wandering Emperors. So now we've just cut all our win cons, it looks like, put in the rings. I don't know. Anyway, that's the new deck. So if you like control, this one is very viable, even though it's 55% win right here. lots and lots of people on Twitter were hitting Mythic, hitting high Mythic with this deck. So definitely very good deck. All right, moving on to Alchemy, the least popular format. Until Crucius is banned, still not my favorite format. But let's take a look anyway and see what's going on here. We got mono white aggro at the doing the best, surprisingly, with a small sample size, but pretty interesting to see. Not Rakdos at the top. Azorius Control also very strong. Rakdos, basically tied for second with Azorius Control, and then a few other standard decks bleeding in there, like enchantments and mono red, coming in pretty hot at the top. So you got some decent options, but I think for the most part, it's just blue eye control versus Rakdos in Alchemy right now as your two main choices. But let's take a look at the mono white deck, just see if there's anything special going on here. Doesn't really look like it. Looks kind of like standard mono white humans. So yeah, nothing really new or special in there. So I guess mono white humans so good in standard that it works in alchemy as well. Maybe this person queued up into alchemy by accident 600 times and it was just like, oh, I'm winning. Okay. I don't know. But yeah, I guess it works. If let's look at the control list as well, because I saw this card, which I thought was interesting. Gandalf the White. Legendary and artifacts have flash, which works out quite nice with the One Ring. And I guess this guy's legendary as well, so you could flash that in, though you rarely ever cast this card. So I'm not sure, but maybe sometimes you would want it. What's the other ability? Oh, you can blink something. So yeah, maybe that's part of it, is you want to blink your ring so you don't have the high cost every turn. And then also playing Saruman's Trickery, and a card I felt was really good. And I kind of think it's good enough to play in Historic. Maybe if you're not playing blue-white or a deck that can't support Archmage's Charm, this would be your next go-to counterspell, because countering and getting a 1/1 is pretty good. And even if it's just a blocker, like a chump blocker, that still, saves you 3 life or 4 life or whatever. So still kind of nice. And you could even put it in like a sack deck. You could do a lot of things with it. Kill planeswalkers with it. You cast a couple of these, then you're gonna have a 2/2 or a 3/3. So I don't know. I think it adds up, and I think if you can get maybe 2 or 3 cards that give you the amass that are worth it, then I think this is gonna be a very solid card even in historic. But for now, it's only an alchemy, but still looking cool. Glad to see people trying out the new cards. All right, that's it for the meta right now, and I've been testing a lot of crazy things in historic, as you've probably seen, and for me, you know, nothing's been too great. That still the Esper Flash deck that I had a few videos ago. That one's still doing really solid for me in historic. The other brews that I've been doing, so. I do have a few other ones that I'm trying out that seem pretty good so far, so we'll see. Still playing around. It's a new season, so why not? Why not have a little bit of fun in the new season? But yeah, all right. Well, let us go into the spicy brews, see what's been working for other people. So this is in standard. We have Esper Control from Sasha Coulter. They are a very strong player that always top of the ranked ladder. And usually I see them playing a lot of mid-range decks. Now, interestingly enough, they went for Esper Control and reached number 13 in the new season very, very quickly. So that's pretty insane. And yeah, they're a believer, it looks like. This is pretty much the stock list for Esper Control that we saw before. Farewell, Sunfall, Wandering Emperors, Void Rens. So they made it work. Seems like Esper is a thing. And yeah, it looks like this was best of 3. So yeah, best of 3, Esper Control works out. Yeah. Pretty cool. Next one in standard, Titan Breach. So this is actually a brew from the Brew Lab. I believe they went 8-2, so pretty good, pretty good. With the Planeswalker dot deck basically, and you got Wandering Emperor, Sorin, Elspeth, Eternal Wanderer, Kaya, and Breach the Multiverse to get all your stuff. Yeah, it makes use of the kind of the mono white mid-range shell with the Spirited Companions, Ossification, that kind of stuff. Pretty cool. And Urza's Assembles was always really nice. Um, really underrated card, but very, very powerful in my opinion. Usually I like to play it with Vraska though, because you can tick up the Saga counters and kind of like pop off on one turn. Play your, you get your Vraska down, you tick it up, you get another value. So yeah, interesting, no Vraska, but yeah, still very good. So this is another option you could play in standard. They did well with it, so you definitely could do some ranking up with this deck. Yeah, and they're in Mythic, so. All right, next one in standard, mono black. Still around, still here, even after Shieldred and Invoke is gone. You can still play. Sorry, not Shieldred, but Invoke Despair is gone. You can still play mono black, and yeah, it's still good. So they're playing with a lot of Planeswalkers, which does make it a little bit more interesting for me than just the old meaty mid-range grind fest. But yeah, when you got the Graveyard Trespasser, Shieldred, and Underdog and stuff like that, and Flesh Gorger in your deck, those are all the really good value cards that gain you life. Makes sense that you're going to beat out some of the aggro decks as well. So maybe if you don't like aggro and you want to do well in standard, this is your best option because it's kind of a mid-rangey deck that can probably beat Mono Red and the Humans deck and things like that. All right, moving on to still standard. This is the Dimir deck. This is I think basically what we saw before, the Dimir mid-range deck. This person won like 10 games in a row with this deck, and I think for the most part is pretty much the stock list, though it is running the one Realm Breaker, which is kind of interesting. So people are playing around with a few different cards. I has Shieldred. I don't think the other one had Shieldred either. So Shieldred, Realm Breaker, a few tweaks, Chromehost Seed Shark, but the rest of the main deck is still there. Fairy Mastermind, Kaito, Liliana, and a bunch of removal and counter spells. So yeah, Dimir is good. It seems like Dimir is good. It finally happened. Dimir's finally good in standard. That's awesome. Yeah, it's like my dream. I wish there was a few more Dimir cards that were like the good old days of Ravnica Dimir, where you're like doing disinformation campaign or Thief of Sanity or things like that. We have a few cards like that in standard, but not a whole lot. And the Invasion of Amonkhet saw some play, but there's not a great deck to make it work yet. So I'm holding my hope out for that one. Okay, this is in Historic. We got blue-white control. We saw this list basically already in the, in the Untapped.gg. Don't know that there's anything really special about this one. Looks like pretty stock list, but yeah, just to show you that it is working for people. They're doing quite well with these decks. We got another person here with again, pretty much almost the stock list. These are the two stock lists, Timely Reinforcements versus the Supreme Verdicts. So there's your two picks for your blue-white control and Historic. Both of these doing very, very well. And then Alchemy, yeah, Jund. This is a Jund list that somebody was doing quite well with. I think this Jarsoul card is another very strong one. Not as strong as Crucius, but still very strong. So they're making use of Delighted Halfling to get their legendary creatures out and to get them out to be uncounterable. So that shuts down the blue-white control decks quite a bit. Perilous Iteration, also a very good draw spell. So that's another one in there, but Yeah, I think Delighted Halfling plus one ring is kind of atrocious, making you not be able to counter the one ring, but thankfully there is also a lot of removal spells, so that is nice that you can hopefully kill the Delighted Halfling and stop them from getting their one ring down early, and not be countered. Ah, yeah, what a wonderful format. And then finally we have Croaky's here. He is playing some Alchemy, and he was playing Crucius, One Ring, uh, Shieldred, Atraxa, using the Spiteful Banditry and the Fable and the Crucius to get you a bunch of treasures, and then to get out your Atraxa. Yeah, so he dominated with that, 19 and 1. Makes sense. Rakdos is already just basically unstoppable, so makes sense that you can splash a Traxa or something like that and just go a little bit more over the top. But all right, well that's it for the spicy brews we got for today and the meta breakdown. Uh, I feel like LTR's effectiveness is running out. There's still a few other cards I really want to try out in work. But for the most part, it seems like their power level is not good enough. Kind of what I shared last week. Bowmasters and the Ring are really the two cards that I feel the most impact. And I guess Reprieve. Sees a lot of play. So a little bit of the counterspell stuff got influence there. Bowmasters very good against the One Ring. And so that's why I think it sees more play than it might normally. But yeah. Bowmasters, Ring, Reprieve. Those are the three cards that made an impact. The rest, not so much. Alrighty then, but yeah, it's a new season. Have some fun, experiment. Don't just grind it out. Go out there, have some fun. Until next time, see ya.